All right, so in this video, I'm going to show how we would assemble those two parts of the windmill together so that they actually have that moving part, and I'll show how we animate that as well to show that those parts are moving. So I want to have the blades of my windmill rotate around this center point on the windmill's base. So what I'm going to do is come over here and look at my assembly, or at my mate types, and I'm going to say that I want to use a Revolute Mate. So Revolute Mate allows one thing to spin around another thing. So this is actually a really simple assembly. I'm going to click on the mate connector that's at the end of this sort of peg that sticks out of the windmill. I'm going to zoom over here and I'm going to find the mate connector that's at the end of this hub and click on that. And now if I zoom back, I should see that my blades are assembled right there. I'm going to get rid of that Revolute 2 that automatically pops up. A nice way to test this is to just grab the windmill blades and kind of give it a spin. If I look at it from the front, one thing I wanted for my blades was I wanted them to sort of basically block the entrance to the windmill at least partly. If somebody was trying to putt through it while that windmill was spinning, if they didn't get it in time, the windmill blade might block it. So that all looks good. And now if I rotate around a little bit, another thing that I can do now that I have that Revolute Mate is I can actually animate it, which is really nice. So Onshape has pretty simple animation features built into it, but it helps us out. And in order to see this animating, all I have to do is right-click on Revolute and choose Animate. And one thing I might want to change is I might want to change the playback type. So reciprocate means that it would basically rotate back and forth. I want it to just spin in one direction, which is what most windmills do. So I'm going to say loop, and now I can press the green play button, or the black play button there. So now I can see my windmill spinning around. So I've got my moving part in there, and by animating it, I can see that it's moving correctly. Okay, so there's my Revolute animate type. So that all looks great. Now, one last thing that I might want is I might have another kind of moving part, which might be sliding back and forth. So I noticed a lot of people in your designs had things that were like sliding back and forth. So I've got one more part in here. I've got this little barrier. Kind of looks like 2 feet, and then it's got a piece that goes between it. Maybe I want this sliding back and forth before the windmill so that you could putt through it if you got the timing just right, or if you didn't get the timing right, maybe this little foot would kind of block the golf ball from going through there. And I want this sliding back and forth. So if we look back at my assembly, I'm going to add that slider right in here, kind of in between where my T-pad should be and in between the windmill there. So I'm going to go back to Insert. I'm going to insert that barrier part. And it's fairly small, but that's okay. I can click the green check. If I orbit around, it's just kind of hanging out underneath there. I can move it up, out of the way, wherever. And now I'm ready to start putting in the actual mates that I need for this. So I want this thing sliding back and forth, and thankfully there's a mate type that's specifically for that, which is our slider mate. The thing that's tricky about this is knowing which mate connectors to use. And so on this, I did a little trial and error before showing you this. What I want to do this slider mate is I want to think about this thing sliding back and forth this way. And so I'm going to use the mate connectors that are on the side of this part because I want it sliding side to side. So I'm going to zoom over here. I'm going to find the mate connector on the side here. I'm going to come back over to the mate connector that's on the actual base. And I've got to be kind of careful here that I want the one that's oriented the right way. So I don't want the mate connector that's oriented this way. Sometimes you have to kind of hover around. There we go. I want the mate connector that's oriented sideways there. So that's going to stick this slider in here. And that's not quite right because my barrier is like hidden below the surface. So what I'm going to do is use a couple of offsets to correct that. I'm going to choose to move that up an inch, and I can zoom in and check. Well, that's still not quite high enough. I've got to actually raise that higher. That looks pretty good. It's just sitting on the surface now. Okay. The other thing I want, though, is that I said that I wanted that to be in between the T-pad and the windmill. So that means I've got to change my offset over here quite a bit as well. Looks like negative 48 inches isn't quite enough. If I can see that correctly, it looks like I'm going to go maybe more like negative 64 inches in this case. And now that thing is sitting right there. So that looks pretty good. I can click the green check, and now if I grab this, we can see that it slides back and forth across here. Same kind of thing, I can come over here to my slider and animate this. And if I hit play, you're going to see that it is barely moving because it's going between 0 inches and 1 inch. So if I wanted to put that sort of just in the middle, maybe I want to have it sliding between negative 32 inches and negative 60 inches or something. And if I change the number of steps to make it smaller, it'll animate more quickly. So maybe I want to change that to like 50 steps. Let's take a look at that now. So now that's kind of sliding back and forth just in that one area. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's what I want. Okay. For the purpose of this video, we're going to call that good. So those are our two joint types, or mate types, that we've demoed so far. We've got our Revolute to make the windmill spin. We've got our slider to make this barrier slide across there.